I thought I'd give you a bit of a lesson, since you were hogging the inheritance all to yourself.
Why should Kelly, who just received the inheritance, be punished?
It was my mother who came forward, saying it. My name is Kelly. I'm a 35-year-old housewife. I've been married to my husband, Ken, for 8 years. We have one 7-year-old son and we don't live with our parents-in-law. We're a perfectly ordinary family. But one day, the ordinariness began to shatter. My father passed away, and I inherited a large fortune. My husband was obviously going to find out about that, and he was overjoyed, talking about buying this and that, even before the funeral. I would rather my father live longer if possible, than receive an inheritance. I was just sad and wanted my husband to support me. However, my husband didn't care about my feelings at all, and was just excited for himself. I was stunned at this time with my brain not working, and I wondered if I had married the right person. The sense of discomfort I felt at the time grew stronger and stronger. My father's funeral was over, and the 49-day memorial service had passed. One day, when we went out to eat as a family on our day off, after we finished eating, we went to the cashier to pay the bill, but my husband didn't take out his wallet. Usually, my husband, who was working, would pay the bill, but he turned away, and he didn't even make a move to pay this time. I had no choice, so I paid the bill that day, and left the restaurant. At the time, I thought my husband didn't happen to have any money with him. Apparently, it turned out that wasn't the case. He first stopped paying for food. Then, not to mention the electricity, water, and gas, as well as the newspaper and the town membership fee, basically everything. It was really inconvenient for me as a housewife to suddenly have this happen, so I decided to talk about it with my husband. You haven't been paying for our living expenses lately, why is that?
What are you talking about?
It's not just about a penny or two, it's a lot more than that, and it bothers me.
Because you have the inheritance money. You got a huge inheritance from your father's side of the family.
Well, so what's the point?
Well, you can just use that money to pay for everything.
What on earth were you thinking? That money is supposed to be saved for emergencies.
But you've got way more than enough, haven't you? It makes more sense for you to pay for it than for me to do my best to pay for it out of my meager salary.
How did you come across it?
Because we're family. What do you even mean?
He seemed to genuinely believe in whatever logic he was using. After saying that, he leisurely went out to buy cigarettes. If it had been just the two of us, I might have done the same. But we had a son together, and we definitely needed to have something for his future, in case something came up. My husband didn't even seem to think about that. Despite that, he wanted to eat out more often than before, and buy a fancy car, or switch his bank account for a car loan over to our joint account. He did whatever he wanted. For the past few months, I have been the only one making deposits into that account, while he hadn't paid anything at all, not even our son's school lunch fees, or PTA fees. Even though I tried talking to him about it many times, he just brushed me off, like it was too much trouble, which hasn't changed for a while. There is no way we can continue to live like this. If I continue to rely on what I have, and spend it without a plan, it will eventually run out. So I decided to make a plan, but I asked one last time, just to be sure. Are you not planning on paying for anything in the future? The reply I got to that question was,
Of course not. Because you have way more money than I do.
If he doesn't even try to understand me, after I talk to him so seriously, then I have to act. If he won't pay, that means he has no right to use it. In other words, if he won't pay, then don't let him use it. From that day on, I stopped serving my husband food. He didn't deserve to eat since he wouldn't pay for groceries. In addition, I stopped doing his laundry. Furthermore, I took my child back to my parents' house, to keep him away from him. When I told my mother what had happened, she welcomed me and my son, happily. Of course, since I was staying with her, I contributed to the household expenses, and helped with the housework. I drove my son to school every day, and picked him up in the afternoon. It took me an hour each way, but I still thoroughly tried to keep my husband away from him. About a week later, my husband finally called me. At first, I thought about ignoring him, but then I thought that, maybe he was sorry for what he had done. I picked up the phone, and his first words were,
"Hey, how long are you going to stay there? It's your job as a housewife to do the housework."
It was clear that he hadn't learned anything from what had happened. I was surprised at how coldly and nonchalantly I was talking back to him. If it is the role of a housewife to do the housework, what is your role working outside the home?
What a big mouth you have. Who do you think has been supporting you all, till now?
I guess it's you.
If you know that, come back right now.
Does that mean I'm a handy housekeeper, who pays for everything?
Hey, don't try to take everything badly. I just think it's unfair that I'm still paying the bills, even though you received a huge inheritance.
Unfair? I've been doing all the housework, without cutting the corner, haven't I?
I'm talking about the living costs. It's common sense that the person with a higher income should bear more of the household expenses.
No, it's not my income.
But it doesn't change the fact that you have a lot of money. So there is every reason to believe that you pay for everything.
Right. Then it's fine with me too. If I pay for the living expenses, that means you'll do the housework for me, is that correct?
No. That's not what I meant.
Because I'm even paying your share of the living expenses instead of you. You should take over all the housework, and look after the child instead of me.
Well, that's... I'm working.
Well, I was doing the housework too. I didn't get paid though. I will come home if that works for you. He didn't know what to say, so he fell silent. I showed no mercy, and just hung up the phone. I said exactly the right things. If my husband is not fulfilling his role as a husband, then I don't need him anymore. Of course, a father, who is like a parasite, would be a bad influence on my son. Above all, I don't want such a person to be with my son as he grows up. After about another month had passed, my husband finally came to my parents' house with a gift box. He looked guilty and kept his head down, refusing to look at us directly. He seemed to be scared of us, as we stared at him. My husband didn't attempt to speak at all, so I sighed deeply, and opened my mouth reluctantly. Do you realize how this happened?
Well, that's...
If I took our son and went back to your place now, would the same thing happen all over again? Are you still counting on my inheritance money?
If there was inheritance money, it should have been shared between us, as a community property.
What?
This is what happens when you try to keep it all to yourself.
You know, inheritance is not a shared property. Don't you know that?
Then you should pay for living expenses after all. You're the only one who looks rich, it's so unreasonable.
When did I look like that?
You did.
I sighed deeply once again. No good. My husband hadn't learned anything from what had happened, and was even jealous of my inheritance. I never thought that my husband, whom I had been with for 8 years, would be like this. At this point, I finally thought of divorce. As if his words started the ball rolling, he keeps complaining, as he apparently has been frustrated so much.
I've been working hard every day to earn money, whereas you've been making a gracious living. Why should I be the only one who has to work hard like an idiot? If you received a fortune from an inheritance, it's right for you to cover the living costs, isn't it? You even went back to your parents' house with our son. As a wife, aren't you, at least, trying to support your husband a little?
What do you mean by a little? You haven't taken out your wallet for us, since I received the inheritance money, have you?
That's because...
Also, you stopped paying for everything, from food to everything else. How on earth can you not remember that you were throwing it all at me?
Because I thought I'd give you a lesson, since you were hogging the inheritance all to yourself.
Why should Kelly, who just received the inheritance, be punished?
It was my mother who came forward, saying it. Until a few moments ago, she had been listening quietly at the back, but she must have lost patience with his unreasonable accusations. She had a huge, full smile on her face. She is angry. He backed away without knowing it, under the pressure of her hostile attitude. She shoved the divorce papers, which she apparently had prepared in advance, at him. With a smile on her face, and she said,
"Here you go, fill this in now."
Wait. I'm not going to get divorced.
Shut up.
Crumb.
He lets out a short scream and hurriedly starts signing the divorce form. After seeing that he had finished writing everything down, she stopped smiling and showed him that we were ready to battle against him.
Be prepared for the compensation.
His face changes color at her words.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
While repeating an unexplained apology, he almost fell down and left, as if he were running away. My mother and I looked at each other, and laughed out loud at the sight of him. Afterwards, my husband was divorced by me, and had to pay compensation and child support. I heard that he is alone and continuing to work hard, while neighbors talk behind his back, saying he is a man who was left by his wife, as he counted on her inheritance money. As for me and my son, I made my mother and I live together in my parents' house, and renovated it with my inheritance money. We renovated it into a house, where I can take care of her, in case something happens to her. I want her to live as long as possible, so that I can return the favor. I want my son to grow up genuine, unlike my husband, who has a messed up personality.